Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athlete Cafe.
Hi guys, I'm Carly, former collegiate lacrosse player.
I'm Abby, former gymnast and collegiate dancer.
I'm Frances, former collegiate track athlete.
And I'm Emily, former collegiate volleyball player. Let's get into today's topics and see what's on the menu.
Large cappuccino. Orders up. Hey, welcome back, guys. How we doing?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good.
Davey's already
Good.
asleep.
Fantastic.
Yes, we got our favorite guest on.
He's trying to stay awake.
It's
so hard.
Is he dozing off?
Yes.
Significantly.
Yeah, you got him for the rest of the time.
Emotional
Not the
support
skinniest
animal.
dog.
It's
not
Little
quite.
chunk.
We would say dense.
He's
a little
very
dense.
dense.
Yeah.
And he's got a big head, but
Cool. Well, excited to be back.
Yes, yeah. I know it's like that awkward time between like Halloween and Thanksgiving. And has anybody started the Christmas music yet?
100%.
I'm
Heck
not.
no.
No. Correct answer.
Not fan, not fan.
I haven't put up any decorations.
Yeah.
Fair. That's
But
fair.
that's mostly because I don't have any currently because they're back at my parents' house in New York. So
that's
if I had
fair.
them in my possession,
they would be.
they would be up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have not. I've thought about it. I've gone shopping, Christmas shopping for stuff.
True.
Just haven't put it up yet.
Well, I feel like I start my Christmas shopping in like the summer because like
Oh.
I'll like forget, and then
That's
by the time we get to
bold.
December, I'm like, no, I gotta spread it out a little
Oh,
bit.
see, but if I buy somebody a gift, they will get it the same day. Like I
Yeah, I was
cannot
gonna say, I
hold
don't think
on
I
to
could hold on to it
presents.
for 6 months like that. It's impressive.
Because like I don't
I
buy
don't
anybody
plan
presents.
at all. If you get a gift, you're lucky. I don't know. I'll send you a gift card in the mail.
Oh, I feel like though this time of year too is like the in between sports seasons,
True.
and people are shifting from playoffs if you're still in it or ending into possibly a winter sport or like your club sport or whatever. So I feel like it's just like a weird time.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, good.
Oh, jeez. I'm hearing a lot of like stress with school right now because
Yes.
the teachers
Yes.
are like, let's get this all done. And then by Christmas and Thanksgiving, midterms will start or, finals will start. But I'm hearing a lot of stress from the athletes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I have one athlete. He is like, he plays soccer, but he's primarily a hockey player. And he's like, I hate to say it, but like my team's really good. We're like advancing into playoffs. And he's like, I need something off my plate. He's like, so I don't want to lose, but part of me wants our team to just play a good game and then lose so that I can just like be done with that. I have so much homework, and he's ready for like transitioning to tryouts for hockey. But he's like, I feel so bad saying it, but I'm ready for soccer to be over. So
Yeah.
it's definitely that time of year.
And on par with our conversation today, but I feel like there's always that expectation that all athletes just want to like win the championship, win this, win that. And some people are like, I'm ready to be done. Like, I got a lot going on here.
Yeah.
I got to focus
Right.
on school. Like, all of the above.
Especially
so.
if it's a sport that's not like their main
Sport.
Oh, yeah.
that they do. Yeah.
And it was interesting. He was like, and I understand that I don't want to complain about it because I have so many teammates where this is their sport and they're seniors, and he's only a junior. So he's like, I get it. Like, they are not ready for this to be over.
For sure.
Mhm.
But he's like, I go out and I do my job, and then I just got to be done with it and go home and I transition. Or he goes to, hockey right after soccer. But
Well, I think that's
It's a
the
lot.
biggest distinction of like, just because you feel that guilt for wanting it to be over doesn't mean that you're not going to still try.
Right.
Yes.
So it's
Right.
like, I think that's a big misconception. If like you would express that to your teammates or even just a few, it's like, I can't say anything because I don't want to come across negatively, but it's like, doesn't mean you're not going to try.
Right,
You just
right.
feel ready for it to be over, and that's okay. Like everything that we go through in life, there's generally an end to it most of
Right.
the time. So it's like, it's natural to be yearning for that and wanting it. But
Yeah.
but if you are not trying, that's something to check in about.
then we will have
something
a
to
conversation.
something to talk through, but if that is how you're feeling. But I think that's a big distinction that not a lot of athletes think about.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to get into our topic for today?
Yes.
It's a big one. It is a big one. I
Huge.
feel like we've
Yes.
definitely touched on it in so many
Yeah.
different episodes or even said the word. And you guys have all heard the word, but expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I think we're
exciting.
gonna cover like 3% of what
Yes.
we could talk about expectations, because this is something that I think it's used so often, but I don't think people really know what is an expectation. And how are they helpful? How are they
Yeah.
not helpful? What do I do with them versus just them
And I
being
feel
there?
like so many times, like with the athletes that I talk to, they like kind of mistake like an expectation for a goal.
Mhm.
But like with that expectation comes a lot of like underlying pressure
Yeah.
when you put it that way. And so it's like interesting because like we'll go over like goal setting and they're like, okay, I should have 3 goals this game, and it's like,
Yeah,
let's
if the
talk about
words
that.
should, must, or have to precede whatever
Or
you
should
say,
not,
or
like
should
with
yeah,
the
should
rest.
not,
Mhm.
I can't,
Mhm.
whatever that is where the expectation lies.
Yeah.
So we always say our expectations are the shoulds, musts, and have tos.
Mhm.
So I should score 3 goals. I must place first. I have to practice 30 hours a week, whatever
I
those things
can't
are.
make mistakes.
Yes, exactly.
Versus I'm going to try to limit my mistakes this game, right? Like that gives you a lot of more freedom and a lot less pressure to perform perfectly or
Right.
all of those things. So definitely the verbiage matters. Like I
Verbiage
think
matters
that
a lot
is
on this one.
something that like I never understood it as an athlete, but and I feel like the expectations police, like when my athletes are talking to me, I'm like, should I heard it.
Want to try that again?
I was like,
Let's
let's redo
reframe.
that. And
Yeah.
they're like rolling their eyes at me. I'm like, okay, but it
But
matters.
but then once
It
they
does.
start to change the language,
Yes. Very.
they
very
start
noticeable.
you
Then they're
start
like,
to see
oh.
them be like, oh, I
Yes.
get it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, expectations are very black and white. It either it is or it isn't. Should or
Mhm.
should not, all or nothing thinking, where goals are very more fluid.
and expectations, it tells you what you should, have to, or must do, but doesn't actually tell you how to do that. So I
Correct.
must score
Yeah.
3 goals. Okay,
Yeah.
but what do I actually need to do to accomplish
Right.
that? It doesn't actually give you any direction on it.
And sometimes we don't even know why that's our expectation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like there's no reasoning for it. Like a goal you set because there's a reason behind it. There's a reason you want to achieve it. You have motivation for it. Like an expectation, you're just like, oh, I should do this. But why? Do you even care about it? Do you even want to do that? Like
Right.
who's telling you to do that?
Yeah,
too?
exactly.
To that point, I feel like I heard someone say one time, like, it's just the hope or feeling that you want something to happen, right? Like, for whatever reason, whether you don't want to disappoint people, whether
Yeah.
you don't want to disappoint yourself, whether you are trying to be a starter on the team, like, you just are hoping to not make a mistake or
Right.
Yeah.
hoping to not do something. It's not, to your point, Abby, telling you actually
to
how
do
to do it or
Yeah.
thinking about the process that it takes to actually achieve something like
Yeah.
that.
And I know Francis, like,
Yeah.
I remember like so clearly when you like pulled out this like document that you created where I was like, that's it. That's the
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
That's the only
visual.
document that matters
The
anymore.
visual.
Yes.
So Francis, can you like explain to us how I think you were the one that kind of could put it on paper and put it into a
Yeah.
visual that really helped a lot of athletes.
Yeah, which is crazy because it just like in one of my sessions, I was like trying to find the right way to explain it, and it just happened, and I'm like, I'm on to something.
You're like, I gotta write this one
like this is
down.
it. But no, like the way I explain it, or like the visual that I kind of tell all of my athletes is when you set an expectation, it's a bar that you set for yourself, and you are standing on the ground trying to jump up and reach this bar. Okay, sometimes you jump and you reach the bar and it's like, okay, I should win today. Sometimes you come out with the win, right? But if you don't reach that bar, you're still left standing on the ground looking up at this expectation and you've made no improvement. You just feel negative because there's no change in it, and you just see that you didn't reach it, kind of thing. And so how I try to explain it is we want to change it from setting that bar. You want to change it into a staircase that has all of these steps for how you'll get there. So if your idea is that you want to win, instead of just setting that bar for yourself, you set a staircase and you start coming up with those steps of, okay, what do I need to do to best help me get to the top of the staircase, which is winning, right? And so maybe it's getting enough sleep the night before, eating a good breakfast, whatever that is, warming up with your team, doing self-talk.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Literally, what was that? Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
Did you
he's,
get it?
he's
You can excuse
contributing.
yourself.
But
Sorry.
no,
this
yeah.
was like mic drop, and like he kind of interrupted you.
but no, you start setting those steps that will help you get there. So even if you don't reach the top of the staircase, even if you don't come out with the win, you still see that you've made improvement and that you've focused on the steps in your control to best help you get there,
Exactly.
kind of thing.
And if you didn't reach whatever this is at the top of the staircase, maybe you went down a stair or two, you're still not at the bottom.
Exactly.
You're still able to kind of adjust, like say, what could I have done differently? What can I do next time that can make this better? And you can continue to go up the stairs again. It's not like, okay, I'm still just at the floor looking up at this bar like, wow, I suck. This is horrible. Nothing, that bar is preventing you from seeing any other possible success that came across with that experience.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
such a great
Performance.
explanation. Like truly, I just wish I could go back in time and hear that.
Yeah.
And then be like,
Seriously.
okay, I'm now approaching life in a way different.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
everything.
literally like 15-year-old Abby
Yeah.
needed that conversation for, so many
Same.
different
I
situations.
know, but I think that's a good point, and I think like kind of going back to what you said, like the stair steps and all of those things. Would you say that that's like the process goals you need to be focused on, or okay,
Yes.
so like
Yeah.
the little steps are the process goals to be focused on, which the way I always say to my athletes is like, okay, so this is your like goal. This is exactly what you want to do, but like, how are you going to do it? Like you said, Abby, like, and that's pretty much a process goal. Like, what are going to be the things
Right.
you focus on in order to achieve
Right.
the bigger things?
Because when it's a bar, that's the only thing that you're focused on is like reaching that bar. But when you set it up as a staircase and you have those process goals, it's like, okay, I need to focus on the next step. Okay, I've made that step. Now I need to focus on the next step. And you see the process to get there, but you're focusing on step by step. You can't go from the first step to the fifth step. You got to take it as a process.
Yeah, and I think this type of mindset is super important for athletes who definitely struggle with that. Like, I didn't do enough, or we didn't win, or I didn't score 50 points because I told myself that I should. Like, if you are hearing that, like, you really need to adjust this thinking and be like, okay, I didn't score 50 points today, but I had 2 rebounds and I focused on my communication with my teammates and my footwork was really good. And like, you can
And I still scored 30.
right.
Like, it's still great.
Right.
yes.
But that's, I think, such a good example, too, where if you said I should score 50 points and you don't score this magical number that has been set for you, maybe you scored 30 and like that is nothing to be disappointed in. Right. So, and I think, Carly, you were kind of getting onto that track of like having so many things. I need to do this and I need to do this. I need to make sure that I set an alarm. I need to make sure that I'm stretching. I need to make sure that doing my physical therapy exercises. I need to make sure that I'm, focusing and visualizing this one specific part of my game or my meet or whatever it might be. That's where when you're standing there looking up at this bar, if you don't get it, you kind of feel like you accomplished 0%.
Yeah.
Right? But if you can look and say, okay, I set out these 10 things that I needed to do, and the last one was that I won,
Yeah.
and I did everything else, and I didn't get that one thing, you're still sitting at 90%.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So,
Or you accomplished
that
5 out of the
90%
10
might not be
things.
100, and, that's still going to suck
Right.
some days, but 90% feels a lot better than 0%, and I think that's where we see so many kids just getting so discouraged. So many athletes are just like, I just need to be done. Like, I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not getting where. I'm not doing anything. Never getting these things that I should have or I think that I have to accomplish. But when we only think of it as that, like, it's either 100% or 0%, they lose so much of what's actually happening. And that's where the motivation decreases. We see kids fall out of love with the sport. And then they end up just kind of, walking away from it sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think another point to add to that too is like when you are so focused on whatever that like rigid expectation is, it causes so much stress because like if you are thinking about winning the game, you can't figure that out until the game's over. So you sit there and you stew about it and you're worried and you're stressed and you're anxious. You feel all those pregame jitters. You do all this stuff, but you're like, I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I don't know what do I have to do to win? I just know I need to win. We have to win. Okay, so if you put some parameters around it, that alleviates a lot of stress and anxiety because you're planning, you're putting effort towards it, you're finding your controllables. So I think a lot of expectations create stress and anxiety too because you're not thinking of the process but just the outcome, which can be so stressful.
Yeah.
And I'll add too that like expectations, I think I've given this example so many times, but like a few years ago, I worked with a kid who was in 5th grade, big baseball player, and he hit, I think, 2 home runs or 3 home runs in one weekend. And so I saw him the following week and he was like, Emily, this was awesome. Like I hit 3 home runs. Like now I got to do this every weekend. And I'm like, okay.
No.
Do you really? I was like, I love that. Great. Like, congrats. Amazing. But like, do you realize how hard it was to do that? And he's like, well, no, I did it. So it shouldn't be that hard to do again. And I'm like, Maybe, but we don't really know. Like, it's really hard to hit one home run, let alone three.
Yeah.
So it's like even just reminding yourself like what is realistic. Like, it's okay to be motivated, and it's okay to have a goal of like, yeah, I'm going to try and hit 3 home runs again, but try to hit them and not feeling like a failure if you don't hit 3 home runs, because even just getting a couple doubles or triples or even an on base is great.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. It's almost like he was standing at the bottom trying to jump up for that bar, and he got it.
Yeah.
So he's
then-
like, oh, I can do it every time.
Well, then
Yeah.
and then the bar becomes higher,
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
right? And so
Shifts.
then he
Yep.
got it. He reached that bar, but he had no kind of broken down plan of how he did that.
Right.
So now the
Because it
bar's
just happened.
higher, but he still doesn't have that staircase to get him there. So now
Yeah.
it's even harder to reach that.
Yes.
So
And he has the tools obviously to do it. So it's like being able to walk him. I mean, he was in 5th grade, so it's a little harder
Yeah.
to have that process-oriented conversation. But like, I would have loved, I think I tried to, but like break down, okay, what did you do to get the home runs? Like, what was the team you were playing? Like, what was the pitching like? What did you feel? Like, kind of breaking that down a little bit so he could replicate it or try to replicate it again. But again, I think every age, every experience is different, but like, you just get so wound up with like, oh my God, I hit 3 home runs. I did it.
I can
Awesome.
do
I should do it every time.
right? And you can, but you don't expect yourself
Don't
to.
expect yourself to do
And
it.
I think that comes back to a conversation I always have with my athletes. Like, I always say, when did you first start your sport, right? So, Abby, when did you first start gymnastics?
I was like, I started when I was 5. I started competing at 7, training 25 hours a week.
Okay, 5, 7, whatever, very young. What was your expectations for yourself when you were 5 or 7?
Oh, I was going to the Olympics.
Oh,
Oh, when I was
could you
little.
do like a cartwheel and stuff?
Yeah, but like not like, but that was the expectation, you know. And
Right.
and it's so interesting. I know we're gonna get into another episode, like expectations from other people, but like that was my expectation. It was like I thought, you know, maybe it wasn't the Olympics, but my expectations were that I had to go out and I had to hit 4 for 4 routines. I had to score in the top 3.
Okay, so this isn't helping my point. So
Okay,
I'm gonna-
sorry.
Okay, so for
This is how you know we
me,
don't
when
script
I
these.
first started lacrosse, I literally just had the expectation to catch the ball. Like, if I caught the ball, I was so excited. Like, catch the ball. Like, my expectations were, at the time, I thought, like, high. But looking back, it's so low because now I can catch the ball with my eyes closed, right? Like, so it's
so
just
interesting.
to go
Yeah,
to my
it's
point.
literally the opposite
Yeah.
of my experience.
I was like really low expectations. Like, but at the time they were high for me because my skill was so low and I hadn't achieved those things as much as I achieve them now. And now, if I didn't catch a ball, I'm like, I should have caught that. Like, how did I not catch this ball? Like, I did it when I was 5 years old, right?
Right.
So, to my point, going to how the bar shifts and can fluctuate based on the specific skill and amount of years of doing the sport.
And that's interesting. Like my expectation was like, oh my God, like I'm going to the Olympics. Like that is just what's going to happen. And then I very quickly realized like, okay, that is just, I mean, at that time they took 7 girls, now they take 5, like they might even just be taking 4. Like my understanding of the sport changed. And so I think at that point that expectation was actually helpful for me because it was keeping me motivated, keeping me whatever. And then when I realized, okay, that's just not probable, like I was just not ever going to get to that point. I would not have done well in that high pressure situation probably. Then it became much different where like I have to move up to the next level. Like I have to only compete each level 1 year. Like it started to change. So it did fluctuate and it did change, you know, as my knowledge of the sport and of what my skill set was changed. So
to my point,
yes,
we're
yeah, we're
back.
back. See what we did there?
I'm like, okay.
I will
how
say
am I gonna
though,
shift this?
how often does this happen in your sessions? So where you ask a kid a question and you're
then
like,
they-
this is going to drive my point home, and then they like
then
throw
they-
you this curveball answer, and
I'm
you're like, oh, let's talk about that, and then we're going to circle all the way
Circle
back.
back.
Oh my God, still
But no,
work out as planned.
I mean that's kind of how like my experience was like with running too. Is like each year like I shaved off a couple seconds on my time, and so it's like okay, the expectation is to shave off more time next year, and then but like you get to a point where it doesn't like my from freshman to sophomore year I cut off 2 seconds, and then sophomore year to junior year I cut off 2 seconds. So junior year to senior year I'm like I'm gonna shave off 2 seconds, like it's
Right.
gonna happen, and it didn't, and it was disappointing.
Yeah, I was gonna say
but
disappointment, frustration.
but yeah, but like it's funny because like every time you reach that expectation, it just shifts up higher for the
right.
next time, and like and you never get that sense of like I accomplished it, because you're always like looking to like the next piece of like, okay, well now I got to do it again, and now I got to do it again, and now I got to do more. And
Which I feel like I saw a lot, at least with some of my kids, of like, I started with them at the beginning of their volleyball season this fall, and we were at tryouts, and they're like, oh, the goal is to get to playoffs, get far into playoffs, have this record, have this stat, whatever. And then like my one girl got to her state semifinals and they lost, and like I was like, you got here though.
It's amazing.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Like this is what you've been talking about this whole time. Like it's so cool to be able to get.
so cool.
That wasn't me.
It's so cool. Like we definitely don't give enough credit to when we accomplish the things we were expecting ourselves to do or expecting to achieve. Like we just are always striving for that next thing.
Right.
I do agree. That's very
And I always say,
understated.
what is the point of playing a sport if you are not having fun or you're not feeling achievement?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
truly.
Yeah.
Like it's so much time, so much effort, so much energy, so much mental and physical effort. Like
Yeah.
if you aren't getting
Anything.
anything
Out of
or like positive and
You're not choosing to look at that.
exactly, what's the point? So if this conversation is resonating with you, we really encourage, like, yes, there is good places for expectation. It causes motivation.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's
But-
important to recognize that too. They can be good in some sense, but if it's driving you to focus just on that failure and just on that lack of success, like
or if it's causing like more pressure
it. Yeah.
for you.
That's where it could literally help to draw out, like, okay, Frances has this cute little visual. Like, it's this little stick figure standing under a bar. Okay, what is that bar, right? And, I want you to write it down as, like, I have to make it to playoffs. I have to score 10 goals. I have to score a 9.8, right? I want you to change that into, like, my goal is to blank. And then literally draw a staircase and then start to put in, what are the steps that I need to do to get there? Do I need to get more sleep? Am I just rolling into practice every day and like I'm too exhausted to even focus on what's actually happening? Great, maybe I start there. Is there one specific part of my game where, maybe I'm just not fast enough, right? Maybe it's my speed and agility I need to start working and honing in on a little bit more, right? Maybe I'm just noticing that an old injury is kind of popping back up. Maybe I need to either check in with my parents. Can I go to PT? Can we get this checked out? Do I remember my old PT exercises? Let's throw those back into the mix, right? Start leading and kind of mapping out what that staircase looks like. Because even if that still doesn't go according to plan, you're going to be able to do some of those things. And it's going to make you feel like, okay, that you might still be standing at the top of the staircase reaching for that bar, but you're a heck of a lot closer to it than if you were on the ground. And it'll make you feel like you have some sort of roadmap to reach that expectation or what you've changed into a goal now.
I think that's like kind of going into some tips to help with this, like exactly what you just said, Abby. Like I kind of go through like a 3-step process with athletes. So like identify when you've set an expectation using those keywords like should nots, have to, have not, haven't, can't. Whatever those words are. Identify when you say it because you're going to say it. We all say it. We all have
be honest
expectations.
with yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
don't try and act all cool. Like we all have
I don't
them.
expect anything of myself.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, you do.
Okay.
You
Right
might
now.
not have known it.
We
but-
Okay, what do you want to do this weekend?
Yeah, I will say
there
though,
it is.
some people expectations do not negatively affect them.
Right.
Correct.
This is a conversation for people who feel the pressure
Yeah.
and are negatively affected either mentally or physically by these expectations they have for
And there might be
themselves.
some expectations that do drive you and motivate you, and then you still might have expectations that don't, right? It's
Yeah,
not
might
either
be.
they always help you or they always
Always,
don't.
yeah.
It could be very slight wording difference
Yeah.
that can make the difference in how you interpret it.
Right.
So identify that, and then like categorize it. So like ask yourself, kind of like you said, Abby, is this an achievable expectation for myself? Like I should not make mistakes ever. Is that achievable? No. You are not ever going to do that. So that's an issue in itself. You are not perfect. So that is not an achievable goal. Now, I should have scored 10 points that game. Okay, maybe you scored 8 the game before. So 10 is absolutely achievable, right? So categorize it. Is this realistic? Is this a realistic expectation to have for myself? And then kind of go down the line of like, am I putting this on myself or other people's putting it on me? Why do I want to achieve that type of categorization? And then third is just focus on like the process cues and the process goals that can help you achieve that. So if it is to score 10 points that game, all right, how should I do that? Well, I scored 8 last week, and I did that by moving my feet, always communicating, and making sure I don't know basketball very well, but my knees are bent when I shoot. I don't know, right? So that's how I always shot those 3-pointers, and I got
Yes, Coach Carly.
So focusing on the little things that will get you to the bigger goal. That's kind of how simply black and white. That's how I think about them.
Yeah.
And conquering them or helping you kind of.
And I think
work it out.
realizing too, like what of like those process cues that are in your control, but also like process wise of like what might be part of the realistic aspect of the game.
Mhm.
Are you playing a tougher team? So you might not have as many
Mhm.
opportunities to shoot. Is your team's defense inherently not great? So there's going to be a lot more things to kind of ebb and flow with. How do your coaches communicate? Like, is it something like playtime? Maybe you're not playing as many minutes this game versus the other. Like, think of the uncontrollables just as much as the process cues of what you
Right.
can control.
Yeah, and especially like obviously in that team sport aspect, it's not just you on the court, it's not just you on the field too. So if your goal is to win, you can do everything in your power to work up that staircase, and you guys still might not come out with the win because it's a team effort
Mhm.
to get there too. So like, yeah, just bringing in those controllables, uncontrollables, and that realistic piece to it. Just because you scored 10 goals last game, now you're going into the playoffs, or now you're going into a championship, so it might be a tougher team this week. So how do you readjust that? So
And that's
standard.
okay.
Mhm.
It's okay to adjust. It's okay
Yes.
to not play the same exact thing every time or consistently like grow in a linear way.
Progress is not always linear.
Mhm.
There
That's
you-
my favorite.
Oh my God.
that was one that I can literally, there's so many, any of my old gymnasts listening are rolling their eyes into the back of their
I was
head right
gonna
now
say.
because they'd be standing up on the beam and they'd fall and they'd look at me being like, why didn't I make that one? And I'd look at them and then I would say, progress is, and they would say, not always linear. And then they like grit their teeth because they were like, they knew what I was going to say. Like they knew that was coming. And they'd never wanted to admit that was good advice from their coach because I didn't know anything.
They're
But
so
definitely
true,
thinking
though.
about that now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they're like,
Progress,
years later.
success, it's not A to B,
No.
straight line.
Even though sometimes your coaches make it out like it is, or your parents make it out like
Right.
it is.
and that's
Which
why
is a whole nother
yes,
conversation.
I was
Right.
gonna say, and I think that's really important to point out. Like we were only talking about really today, like expectations you put on yourself,
yeah.
which are hard. They're very hard to manage, but sometimes it's not the only expectations that we
Yeah.
have, right? We have coaches, parents, teammates, all of those things combining, and it can be really hard to manage other people's expectations of you. That's a whole nother conversation
Yeah,
that we're
that'll
going to
be a
get into
secondary
another day.
podcast.
We're going to, try to separate those out a little bit so that you feel like you have real tangibles for each of those.
Yeah.
And again, the cool thing about you and recognizing your expectations is you have the power over them. And sometimes that's overwhelming for people, but sometimes it's really like exciting because you have the ability to change them on your own.
Mhm.
So that's why we started with that one today.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, like the expectations that you set for yourself, you assume other people are setting that same expectation, which is again like another conversation to kind of get into. But like I've noticed just in the past couple weeks that a lot of my athletes have been saying that, where like it's like, okay, like I'm setting an expectation for myself, but I feel like my parents want the same thing, and I'm like, have they said that to you? but it, like, I think that's just another interesting aspect too, is like you can still control that expectation that you set for yourself, and it might adjust how you feel other people might have those expectations on you, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
No, it
absolutely.
does. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, we'll definitely embark on that others part of expectations.
Right, but that
as a part
is, we were
two.
talking about controllables. You cannot control the expectations other people have
Yep.
for yourself. So start with the expectations that you're setting for yourself. Those are within your control. If you can get a good basis of that, it's going to make you feel a lot more empowered to handle those expectations from other people. So start with the ones that you have for yourself, right? Write it down, put it on paper, get the visual.
Remember the bar and the staircase?
Yes, right?
the
And
visual.
Can we get like can we like put that on the podcast somehow?
I'm sure Evan will
I'm sure.
probably
Yeah.
put
Great.
that
We're
in.
gonna put it on the podcast for you to see.
And then, right, so we were talking about finding your expectations. trying to put them into goals, right? What are those process goals?
Mhm.
I know we kind of plugged this last time, but on our website, we do have goal setting workbooks, right? We have ones for
Yes.
some specific sports, the ones that we kind of directly played, but we also have one that is applicable to all sports. So if you need help figuring out how to make those staircases,
Yeah.
we've got some
Got you.
resources for you.
Yep. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, good.
Amazing.
All right. Well, we'll be back to this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably
we will
more than
return.
once.
Yes. I know. Yeah. Hopefully you're taking away, again, think about your expectations. That's our big takeaway from today. And hopefully like this was eye opening and just a sense of like thinking it through differently than goals. Because again, like we said, these are goals and expectations are a lot of times interchangeable. People make them to be. But
And
they're
they're
not.
very closely related.
Yes.
Right. It's things that you want to achieve. Just how do you frame it in
Yeah.
your mind?
For your success.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah.
Cool.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.